Good morning and welcome. We come together this morning once again to hear from God's Word. And so I'll begin by reading Luke chapter 11, verse 33 through to the end of verse 36. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it in a cellar or under a basket, but on a stand so that those who enter may see the light. Your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. But when it is bad, your body is full of darkness. Therefore, be careful lest the light in you be darkness. If then your whole body is full of light, having no part dark, it will be wholly bright, as when a lamp with its rays gives you light. May the Lord bless the reading of his word. If I was to bring a lamp into the church, the old-fashioned oil lamp with a wick burning, and light it and leave it at the front, and then proceed to cover it with a basket, we would likely have a fire. So I've opted not to do that. I want the church to be on fire, but not literally. So we look at the verses that Jesus spoke to us this morning about being light. He makes an obvious practice into a conversation. Everyone would have lit their homes with some form of lamp. Now they're going to hear about being light. Jesus says no one, having lit a lamp, sets it in a hidden place or under a basket. That is a literal translation. Everyone listening would have had some form of oil lamp, and they would have used it on a daily, nightly basis. The lamp was a portable source of light, much like our oil lamps of today. Many of you probably still have an oil lamp kicking around somewhere. It could be moved from a table to another table. It could have been moved out to where someone needed better light to work by. I remember my grandfather had oil lamps in his barn for going on those early winter mornings to take care of the cattle and other livestock. But light is there for all to enjoy. It is for the benefit of everyone. And the light was then placed on a stand, usually a tall stand, and it would then light the entire room. The idea that anyone would put a lamp under a basket, or the Greek term is krypte, which is where we get our word crypt from, some secret hidden place. Now that would have seemed rather absurd to the people Jesus was talking to. Why would anyone who had taken the time to make the light turn around then and hide the light? Now, being a follower of Jesus, being a child of God, we were never told that it was supposed to be a life that was free of troubles or burdens. And throughout God's word, we find references to these various troubles and the burdens, but they are always in the context of God helping believers to get through. Psalm 55 verse 10 says, "Cast your burdens on the Lord, and he shall sustain you." When we ask God to give us this day our daily bread, it is so that we will be strengthened for the day, because who knows what we will have to endure. Jesus told his followers that the world would hate them, and not to be surprised by that. John chapter 15, verse 18. He warned them of pending persecution, and throughout the history of Christianity, we see that many gave their lives in order to share their light. What has happened to the church today? Believers aren't hiding the light necessarily, but it seems that they show it to one another as if it is a secret possession. I don't know if you remember Sesame Street, but there was a character in Sesame Street, some guy who was wearing a long trench coat, who was always trying to sell Ernie a letter. You know, hey, bud, want to buy a Q? And Ernie, what? That is not how God has intended his light to be shown. We're not to hide it and then just willy-nilly find someone who we want to give it to. It is to be placed on a lampstand so that those who are journeying may see the light. Many of our Bibles say who enter in, but the word in the Greek is journeying. By placing the lamp on a stand, an individual was purposefully giving their light to others, be it their family, their friends, or strangers. Those who were journeying, who were seeking something as they traveled in darkness, could see the light and then be drawn to it. So we understand that this light that Jesus is talking about is for sharing. Now we realize that the earth is not our home. It is our dwelling place. It is where we are to share the light that we have found. And we are to share it with others who are still in the dark. Now this is not my quote, but it is a familiar quote. With great power comes great responsibility. We have power. We have been given the light because we have come to know Jesus. But it is also our responsibility then to put that light where people can see it. Now let me say this about the light. God's light is God's Son. We understand that. And it is his Son as we discover who he is in God's Word. And it is pure in form as Jesus Christ is pure. The light does not need man's manipulating it to make it attractive, and it does not need to be made flashy or distracting. The light does not need to be seen through any special lens or filter. We have God's Word in its pure form, and that is where we find true light. It stands alone in its brilliance and radiance and in its splendor. Now, Jesus continues speaking to the crowd, and he says, your eye is the lamp of your body. So we've moved beyond the light under the basket. We're talking now about the lamp, and the eye is what provides light to enter into the body. It allows images to pass into our mind. It is a conduit to our heart, so it affects both. Jesus goes on to say, when your eye is clear, and the idea here being that clear is the Greek word that means singular in focus. When the eye is perfectly fixed upon one thing and one thing only, and when that one thing is the light, Jesus says the whole body is also light. See, darkness can't exist if there is a constant source of light coming in. What we look at has an effect upon us. What we read and what we watch. God gives us these instructions in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brothers. So he is speaking to everyone who is a part of the body of believers, his children. Finally is not used here to wrap up a conversation. It means from now on, from here on forward, as believers, as followers of Jesus, you are to do this. And then the verse carries on, whatever is true. That means what God says is true. Whatever is honorable. In other words, anything that is deserving of respect and that which is to be revered. Whatever is right, as approved by God. Whatever is pure, according to God's standards. Whatever is lovely, that which is worthy of one's personal affection. And whatever is commendable, whatever is well spoken of. If there is any excellence, any moral goodness, if there is anything worthy of praise, deserving righteous recognition, we are told that we are to consider these things. Look at these things. Look for these things. Keep these things in mind. The more time we spend taking in the light, the more we become light. Now, I want you to think about real light. Think about sunlight. It has a positive effect on our body. We get vitamin D through a God-designed chain reaction when ultraviolet B rays from the sun hit vitamin D receptors in our skin and convert the cholesterol in the skin into vitamin D3. Now that then helps us absorb calcium, which is good for our bones. The D3 triggers the production of antibodies, which strengthens our immune system. And D3 has also been found to affect people's moods. So we need that vitamin D. We need the sunlight. Now they have been able to make vitamin D in a pill form, and it does the same thing. But we have to understand, it does affect us. Vitamin D makes us more pleasant. People are more pleasant on sunny days. Now I want you to think of that same idea with a biblical perspective. When we are exposed to the light of the sun, God's Son, how are we changed by the light of the sun? How should we be taking in the light of the sun for our benefit? Well, we have God's Word. We open the Word and we read His Word and we learn more and more. And it is for our benefit because we are God's children. But now the opposite is true as well. The lack of exposure to sunlight can have adverse effects on people. It makes them sad, and that's even what they call it. It makes them depressed. It makes them feel weak. They need sunlight. But how is that best expressed in biblical perspective? Jesus said it this way, but when it, being the eye, the lamp of the body, is evil, when it is focused on those things which are bad, which are wicked, which are in opposition to God's direction, as he expressed in Philippians 4, verse 8, when we are looking at those things which are not true, those things which go against what God has said, those things which God would not approve of, things which are impure and immoral, things which are not worth mentioning, when those things enter into the body, Jesus says it reflects on the person. And your body is also dark. That's how it transforms. Do you know what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18, verse 9? Do you recall? And if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and cast it from you. It is better for you to enter into life one-eyed than having two eyes, to be cast in Gehenna of fire. It is better to go into heaven with one eye than to be cast into hell with two. Now, is Jesus kidding? Is he just speaking off the cuff? Or is he speaking about the spiritual damage that the long-term effect of sin has on the body when the eye allows evil to enter in? Jesus said it was better that the eye is destroyed than to have the entire body destroyed in the end. He goes on to say in this passage, therefore take heed. Be aware. Look at something closely. Examine it. Lest the light that is in you be darkness. In other words, don't allow yourself to be fooled into believing that the light being shown isn't in fact darkness. Don't be spiritually blind. Don't allow those things which are contrary to God's word enter into your body, regardless of who speaks them. There are more than 100 biblical verses that speak about false teachers. Wolves disguised as sheep, disguising darkness as light. And as people listen and allow that quote unquote light, which is in fact darkness, to enter into them, it changes them without really their knowledge. Jesus goes on to say, therefore, if your whole body is full of light, not having any part dark, and again, this isn't a suggestion, this is his direction, it might be completely light, as when a shining lamp might light you. The word here for shining is compared to a flash of lightning. A flash of lightning cannot be missed. It is visible to everyone. I sat on my porch this past week as a lightning storm rolled through, and even the bolts we couldn't see, you knew lightning had flashed because it lit up the sky. And then there was the one that we did see, and that was pretty impressive. Well, that same way that light is seen, visible to everyone, we have to look at Jesus and realize Jesus made himself known to everyone. He did not sneak into this world. The sky lit up in a brilliant splendor, and angels announced his arrival. And when Jesus spoke, he spoke openly and loudly so that all people could hear him. When Jesus did miracles, it wasn't for one or two people. Jesus had witnesses. Sometimes he had 2 or more. Sometimes it was thousands. After his resurrection, Jesus appeared to more than 500 witnesses. How visible are we? See, those who are full of light should be equally as visible as Jesus was. You know, we hear that question, or maybe we've even asked ourselves when we've seen somebody else and we see what they're doing, and we say the question, I think they might be a believer. And maybe somebody has looked at you and thought the same thing. I think they might be a believer. Well, according to this passage, there really shouldn't be a question about it. The people who know us should know that we are believers. And it's not because we carry our Bible, but our lives reflect lives of believers. And again, it comes with being light. It comes with allowing light to enter into our bodies and keeping out the darkness. It's a difficult thing to do because we do live in a world that is changed. But we do have to stand by the truth. And maybe there will be those who won't like it. But we do know what we are supposed to do. We are to be light because there are those out there who are looking for the light. And we need to be strengthening ourselves to be able to stand against the darkness that is coming. And understand God goes with us, and he will keep us strong. Amen.